come together this afternoon to celebrate the life of Sister Bobbie Daniels. She was a singer. She loved to sing and loved singing these songs for her this afternoon. We're going to sing from page number 74. Page number 74, Abide With Me. Abide with me, fast falls the eventide, the darkness deepens, Lord, with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, oh, abide with me. Swift to its close, steps out life's little day. Earth joys grows dim, its glories pass away. Change and decay in all around I see. O thou who changeth not, abide with me. I need thy presence every passing hour. What but thy grace can foil the tempter's power? Who like thyself my guide can stay, can be? Through clouds and sunshine, oh, abide with me. Page number 564. I've been in South Texas about 40 years, and I've known Sister Bobbie a great part of that time. During the time that I've worshiped here in Missouri, there was a song that she would always ask me to sing. You might notice in the chorus, you'll have to pick it up because I might get a little bit behind you. But please sing out this song. This is one of her songs, and she loved to sing it. Follow me. I traveled down a lonely road, and no one seemed to care. The burden on my weary back had bowed me to despair. I oft complained to Jesus how folks were treating me. And then I heard him say so tenderly, my feet were also weary upon the Calvary's road. The cross became so heavy, I pressed beneath the load. Be faithful, weary pilgrims, the morning I can see. Just lift your cross and follow close to me. I work so hard for Jesus, I often boast and say, I've sacrificed a lot of things to walk the narrow way. I gave up fame and fortune, I'm worth a lot to thee. And then I hear him gently say to me, I left the throne of glory and counted it but loss. My Thus if I die upon a foreign field someday, would be no more than love demands, no less could I repay. No greater love hath mortal man than for a friend to die. These are the words he gently spoke to me. If just a cup of water I place within your hand, then just a cup of water is all that I demand. But if I take to living, they can thy glory see. I'll take my cross and follow close to thee.
There were a good number present this morning, and thank you all for being here. My son knows I'm about to lose my voice, and so crank it up as loud as you need to. It was about 8 months ago, I think, that many of the same people sitting here were in this building. And I was standing up here, and we were paying tribute to Bobbie Daniels. We had a good service, lots of good stories from friends and family, and I expect we'll have that today. We left from here, and as some of you might know, we took Buddy's ashes. A number of the family sitting right here, we went out to sea and dropped his ashes off on a beautiful day, which is exactly what Buddy would have wanted. I want to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But thank you all for being here to come to pay tribute to Bobbie. I've known her virtually all of my life, but when I read the obituary in the paper that Vance wrote, there were a number of things that I didn't know. And I'd venture to guess there are things that you don't know either, some of you sitting here. So I'm going to read about 3/4 of this obituary just as Vance wrote it. Bobbie Laverne McDaniels McCullough Mayfield Daniels. How many of you knew her when she had all of those names? Several people sitting here. Certainly Doc did and others. I knew her when she had 3 of those names. Bobbie L. Daniels, age 85, of Wild Peach, Texas, passed away on Wednesday, December the 6th, 2017. She was born at home to the late John Wiley McDaniels and Bessie Mae Smith McDaniels on January 20th, 1932, near a small crossroads town known as Personville, Texas. Bobbie grew up during a very difficult and humble time in the Marble Falls area of Texas. She would watch her younger brother, Johnny McDaniels, while the rest of the family would work at odd jobs such as picking cotton, cutting cedar posts, hauling hay, milking cows, or whatever they could find. Her older brother, Glenn McDaniels, would work alongside their parents to help provide. Eventually, the whole family would work these jobs in their early years to make ends meet. Bobbie was a godly woman who searched for the truth and happiness in life. She found both that through worship and family. She was married 3 times but never divorced. Her first marriage was to Joseph William McCullough, who passed away during a diving accident. She had her first 2 children, Audrey David with Billy Joe McCullough. She later married Robert Etheridge Mayfield, who also passed away on a job with Phillips Petroleum. She had 2 more children, Vance and Dean, with Bobbie Mayfield. She was still a young woman in her early 30s and had experienced such tragedies, 2 deceased husbands, yet she never lost her faith in God. She found love yet a 3rd time and married William Parker Daniels, known as Buddy, with whom she had her 5th child, James. She was married to Buddy over 50 years, and this year, due to complications of pancreatic cancer, he passed away. Bobbie spent the last 2 years of her life in Cypress Wood Care Center, where she was well cared for and often visited by family and friends. Her memory will often fail her, yet she never ceased to pray and honor God. Her remaining thoughts. Due to the humble beginnings, she did not complete her education until later in life. Bobbie completed her GED at Brazosport College and took great pride in the fact that she did it on her first attempt. She was a very determined, independent woman who delivered eggs, drove school buses, ran a small snow cone business, managed books for the Shrimp Boat Corporation, and finally worked at Benchmark in Angleton before retiring. She was an eternal optimist and thriving to find the most good in people and circumstances. She took care of her brother Johnny, both her parents and all of Buddy's parents. She cared for each of them until God called them home and then provided them the final arrangements for each one. Bobbie was a member in good standing with the Brazoria Church of Christ. She loved spending time with her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. She had a special bond with them all. The old homestead in Wild Peach was the gathering place for many occasions and sleepovers. The giant oak tree near her home had a rope swing and a tree house over the years. She would watch kids and birds play near the tree, and she loved the sight of it all. Bobbie was preceded in death by her mother, Bessie, father, Wiley, her older brother, Glenn, her younger brother, Johnny, and 3 husbands. She is survived by her 5 children, Audrey Janelle McCullough, Carlo Bernhausen, Toby, William David McDaniel, girlfriend Ludia Whitener, Alfred Vance Mayfield, wife Jan, Raymond Dean Mayfield, wife Jean, James Kendall Daniels, wife Sharon. Grandchildren as followed: Mandy Cario, Josh Mayfield, Joe McCullough, Kevin McCullough, Kelly Mayfield Munson, John Bernhausen, Roy McCullough, Jake Mayfield, Haley Wells, Casey McCullough, Ava Mayfield. The number of great-grandchildren, cousins, and nieces are too numerous to mention. Quite a long story, but I would tell you there's quite a number of things I didn't know about that. I did not know that she got her GED when she was grown up. I remember very well when she worked for Benchmark, but I want to make a couple of quick thoughts, and then I'll have my lesson in a moment. I knew Audrey. We are the same age. David's a couple of years younger, I think, if I remember correctly. But I knew, I guess I knew Audrey going back to the 1st or 2nd grade. We knew each other from church as well as from school. By the time that I was about 14 or 15, which happened to be when Bobbie married Buddy, we started having get-togethers at all of the houses out in Wild Peach. At the Matthews house, and Emmerdale is here, we're all the same age, the Powell's house, the Thornton's house, and the Mayfield Daniels house. And so that's really when I got to know who Bobbie was. What I have had happen in my life is one of my great, one of the great events of my life is how many times I lived long enough that people who were my friends' parents became my friends. And that really was true with Bobbie. We became good friends, I would say, 30 years ago. We became much closer in the last 8 to 9 years that I was here with this congregation. And so I loved knowing her. I loved knowing this family, and certainly am thankful to be a part of it in this service this afternoon. If you would, please bow your head. Our Father in heaven, we thank you so much for this beautiful day. We're thankful, Father, with the cold weather and the rain that is coming upon us, that you have given this wonderful, beautiful afternoon to be together. And Father, we're so thankful for the event that causes this special or particular group to be together today, and that is to celebrate the life of Bobbie Daniels. Father, we're so thankful that you gave her the long, healthy life that you had. We're so thankful, Father, that she had her good mind until she was up into her 80s. We're thankful, Father, for the children that she had in her posterity through grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We're especially thankful, Father, for the life that she lived, for the example that she set for each one of us. Father, we're thankful that even though she had tremendous difficulty in her early life, having 2 husbands to pass away, that she never forsook you, and she was always faithful, and she taught that to her children and grandchildren, and she lived it every day of her life. Father, she was an inspiration to each one of us, and we're thankful that we had her this time. Be with us as we go through this service. Forgive us of our sins. We ask in your Son's name. Amen. We'll have another song at this time.
457, the last mile of the way. If I walk in the pathway of duty, if I work till the close of the day, I shall see the great King in his beauty when I've gone the last mile of the way. When I've gone the last mile of the way, I will rest at the close of the day. And I know there are joys that awaits me when I've gone the last mile of the way. If for Christ I proclaim the glad story, if I seek for his sheep gone astray, I am sure he will show me his glory when I've gone the last mile of the way. When I've gone the last mile of the way, I will rest at the close of the day. And I know there are joys that await me when I've gone the last mile of the way. And if here I earnestly striven, and I've tried all his will to obey, 'twill enhance all the rapture of heaven when I've gone the last mile of the way. When I've gone the last mile of the way, I will rest at the close of the day. And I know there are joys that await me when I've gone the last mile of the way.
When I was finalizing my thoughts for this service, I had the obituary sitting beside me, and I have a particular passage that I love to read in certain occasions, probably no more than 10% of the funerals that I do, and I do lots of funerals. But if you were to take the passage that we're going to read in Proverbs chapter 31, and if you were listening to the obituary that I read a moment ago, and you were to lay the two side by side, I want you to think about, as we go through this text, how many similarities they are. And the reason is very simply this. There is a kind of woman that is absolutely typified in the 31st Proverbs, 31st chapter. The New American Standard says an excellent wife. The King James just says a virtuous woman. But obviously, this woman being talked about had multiple children and had husbands and so forth. I did not know a lot of what I read in this obituary about the early days of Bobbie's life. I didn't know. I knew that she grew up in Marble Falls. She told people that fairly often. I didn't really know. I know because of her age, she was a post-depression baby and probably did everything that had to be done to make a living. So I want to read Proverbs chapter 31, beginning in verse 10. And I want you to think about what I read on her obituary and see how many similarities you see. An excellent wife who can find, for her worth is far above jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. The idea being her husband never had to worry about her. He never had to worry about her sneaking around behind his back. He never had to worry about her stealing or saying bad things about him. His heart always trusted in her, and there was no reason for that not to happen. You think about how many times today people get married, and one of the greatest fears they have is What does my husband say about me? What does my wife say about me? What are they doing when I'm not watching? He says she does him good and evil not all the days of his life. She looks for wool and flax, and with her hands, work with her hands in delight. She's like a merchant ship. She brings food from afar, rises while it is still night. She gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. She considers a field and buys it, and from her earnings she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. I want to just stop for a minute and think about this. How many of you have known people that outlived 3 spouses? I've known a couple in my lifetime. I've done services for people who lived a long time. I did a service for a man some years ago that was a month shy of being 106 years old. And he outlived 3 spouses by 20 years. Bobbie had 2 husbands pass away from accidents before she was in her early 30s. That's pretty amazing, I would imagine, in the time period. But let me tell you what stuck out in my mind more than that. In all the time that I knew her, I never knew her to not be faithful in attendance to the Lord. Ever. I didn't know it. And I knew her pretty well for 50 to 55 years, something in that range. Now, how is it that so many people in life can say, well, you just don't know what happened to me. You don't know the problems I've had in my life. Oh, if you had only been through my life. One of the things that Vance wrote in here, I thought was pretty amazing. He said she was an eternal optimist. How many of you knew Bobbie to be an eternal optimist? It didn't really matter what was going on. She was going to be smiling, and she's going to be saying, everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. From the time I was a little kid. So you think about this. She considers a field and buys it. From her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She senses that her gain is good. Her light does not go out at night. The idea being you work until very late in the night, you get up early in the morning, and you don't get upset, you don't get depressed about it. It's just the way life is. You think about the generations of women that are on this earth since the time Bobbie was a young lady, and things have changed a lot. And I don't want to go into that in this lesson, but I'm just going to tell you that she comes from a generation of servants. She comes from a generation of people that were faithful and servants. They spent their life. I can remember my grandparents getting up 4 o'clock in the morning and cooking breakfast for whoever needed to be cooked and milking cows. And I remember thinking it was fun the first time I got to churn butter. The second time I churned butter, it wasn't nearly as fun. I'm just thinking about the 50th time you did it. Well, how fun was that? I remember a time when my grandmothers would take a big old piece of steel and they would put it on the top of the stove, and that's how they ironed clothes. Now, you think about a time where you didn't run down to Walmart to get butter, and you didn't go down to Stewart's down here to get milk. You went out and got it. You got it at the barn. That was a certain type of woman. She senses that her gain is good. Her light does not go out at night. She stretches out her hand to the distaff. Her hands grasp the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor and stretches out her hand to the needy. She's not afraid of the snow for her household are clothed with scarlet. She makes coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known at the gates where he sits amongst the elders. Now, I want you to think about this concept. The idea being, here's a man that impressed a woman enough in the story, and I think in this story, where she decided that Buddy was the person she needed to marry and was married to for 50 years. And I know for a fact, and I would say that the children would know this, Buddy was very happy to have her. He felt like he had accomplished something because she was just that kind of person. She says in verse 23, her husband is known at the gates where he sits amongst the elders of the land. She makes linen and sells them and supplies belts to the tradesmen. Strength and dignity are her clothing. She may not have had beautiful clothes, but the clothes she had, everybody knew what it was. There are people here, I know there are ladies here that knew Bobbie a long, long, long time. She's got kinfolks here that knew her all of her life. What you knew was, whatever kind of dress she had on, her clothing were strength and dignity. And she smiles at the future. That's the eternal optimist that I was talking about a moment ago. She opens her mouth in wisdom and teaching of kindness on her tongue. She looks well at her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. There are people, sometimes I fall in that category, that sit in front of the TV, the blue hue, for hours and hours and hours at night, and I don't get up and I don't think about anything. I was watching something on the internet a while back, and it was talking about the difference in men and women. And the fellow he was a preacher of some kind, and he made a point. He said, men have the ability to sit for hours and think about nothing. I'm in that category. Women generally are not like that, and certainly Bobbie was not that way. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband also praises her, saying, many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain. But a woman who fears the Lord shall be praised. Give her the product of her hand, and let her work praise her in the gates. The product of her hand is what you see here, and what she has done for other people, and the reputation that she had with people that went to church with her for 40, 50, 60 years. That is the product of her hand, and that's all she needs. That and the approval of God. I want to think about a couple of things for just a moment. I have wondered in my 35 years of trying to preach, how is it that there are certain people that come to know the Lord when they're young, and they're faithful all the days of their life? They never diverge. That's not to say that they didn't sin. It's not to say they didn't make terrible decisions in their life. It's not to say that they didn't from time to time get discouraged. But what I am saying is, there is a kind of person that comes to know the Lord early in their life, not having any clue what's going to happen in their life, but yet they never diverge from knowing the Lord. I would tell you, when you think about 1 Corinthians 15:58, he's talking about the day will come that all of us are going to leave this earth. Some of us will die and go to the grave. Other people will be alive when the Lord comes back. And he says, this is what I'm going to tell you, 1 Corinthians 15. This body ain't leaving this earth. Every single thing that's a part of this earth is staying right here. But the time will come that everybody will be changed. But he finishes that by saying in the last verse, be ye therefore steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. That to me is a good verse to describe Bobbie Daniels. Man, did she have a reason to have a bad attitude in life. But she didn't choose that route. Some of you were here last Sunday. I did a lesson on attitude. Attitude determines everything in life. The last thing I want to talk about is there was a woman, her name was Tabitha, in the 8th chapter. And I want to look at a couple of passages, verses in this text, Acts chapter 8. So this woman was a godly woman. She was a widow woman. She had helped so many people, and she was very good at making things, and she would give them to the poor and to widows. That word, the widows, occurs twice in this few verses. But she was someone that was always busy. Now, when she passed away, they began sending word out to the Apostle Peter, who was fairly close by. Peter had the ability to raise people from the dead, and they knew that. So when she got sick and was about to die, they grabbed him, get him here. Well, by the time he got there, she had already passed from this life. And this is the text that I want to talk about at that point in time. In the 9th chapter, in verse 36, in Joppa there was a certain disciple named Tabitha, which is translated in Greek Dorcas. This woman was abounding with deeds of kindness and charity, which she did continuously. That is a beautiful phrase to describe any woman And in my judgment, it describes Bobbie. It came about at that time she fell sick and died. And they washed her body and laid it in an upper room. And since Lydda was not far from Joppa, the disciples, having heard that Peter was there, sent 2 men to him, entreating him, "Do not delay, come to us." There weren't many people around that had the ability to raise folks from the dead, but they knew Peter was one of them. Peter rose and went with them, and when he had come, they brought him to an upper room, and all the widows stood beside him weeping and showing all the tunics and garments that Dorcas had used to make while she was with them. Peter sent to them all out and knelt down and prayed, and turning to the body he said, "Tabitha, arise." And she opened her eyes, and when she saw Peter, she sat up. Now looking at this, Peter, verse 41, and he gave her into the hands and raised her up, and calling the saints and the widows, he presented her alive. I want to talk about a couple of things very quickly. Number one, this woman was so special to her community. She was so special to the poor people and the widow people that lived around her. It was a tremendous loss when she passed away. And they wanted to do everything they knew how to do to get her back to life again. She was too valuable. I don't know how many years she lived after this, but in this little text I read 5 verses. In 5 verses it uses the word widows twice, 2 times. More than likely she was a widow woman, because there's no indication of her having children or a husband, but she took care of other widow women. That was her job. I would say Bobbie was only widowed for 8 months, and I don't know how much she knew about Buddy's passing. I think the kids could tell you more about that. The Lord had probably in many cases hidden that from her. But I would say, having known the situation, I can think of a number of widow ladies of this congregation that she took care of as long as she could in everything that she knew how. She didn't have a lot of money, but she had a kind word. She had the ability to cook, the ability to make things, and she did that. And I feel blessed to have known all of that. I do a lot of funerals. I've done 3 this week. One Sunday, one Wednesday, and one today. Some funerals are extremely difficult to do. And they're extremely difficult to do because the person that we came to honor didn't help out very much. You know what I'm talking about. There are people that everybody that comes up here, they will try to find something nice to say about this person, but by and large, that's hard to do. This is an easy one. Because her mind was failing her the last couple of years, we all got to say goodbye to her slowly, just like with my mother and others. But she preached her own funeral. All I did was just get up and read a few passages. You have memories, every one of you, in your mind of who Bobbie was. So she took care of business. She preached her own funeral. What I will leave you with, and after I finish in just a moment, I'm going to ask anybody in the family or friends who have something to say to come up and say it. But what I would say to you is, the day will come that every single person sitting here right now or standing is going to be passing from this life. And you're going to have somebody that needs to stand up and say nice things about you. And more important than that, orders of magnitude more important, you're either going to hear these words, "Well done, good and faithful servant, enter into the joys of thy Lord," or you're not. You're going to learn, all of us will, that God prepared 2 places. Matthew 25 talks about, in Matthew 25, for those that did what the Lord wanted them to do, He prepared a place for them where they would have a new body, and the new body would never wear out. That body was going to last forever. In heaven, no eyeglasses, no crutches, no wheelchairs, because bodies don't wear out. This one was designed to wear out. And Bobbie lived just over 80 years, and 3,000 years ago, That's what Moses said. If you had good health, you'll last about 80 years. We're building hospitals by the hundreds all over Houston. We've learned about cholesterol and heart attacks, and we've learned about every kind of thing in the world, and we've added a couple of years to people's life. And that's it. If you're lucky. If you're lucky, you live to be in your 80s. And then Hebrews 9:27 says, it is appointed unto man once to die. And I said Sunday in a service here, that's an appointment you're not going to miss. You're not going to be late to. If you have a tendency of being late, I will guarantee you will not be late to this appointment. 2 Corinthians 5:10 says that we must all stand before the judgment seat of God and give an account for the deeds done in the flesh, whether they be good or evil. One of these days, when we pass from this life, we'll find something out. God has a book, and that book is called the Book of Life. And my name is either in that book or it's not in that book. What's amazing is in Revelation chapter 3 and verse 5, I tease all the time about playing golf. There's a reason why there are no erasers on golf pencils. But God's got an eraser on his pencil. A person can have their name in the book and then it be erased. So what happens if I live this life and I lived it to its fullest and I saw stuff and I made money and I traveled and I did all the partying and ate the best food in the world, but when I passed from this life, my name was not in that book? And I'm going to tell you, to me, what's sadder than that. Imagine a picture where God takes that book and he turns it around and he holds it up, and you can see where your name was in there one time and it got erased. If you miss heaven, you've been a failure in this life. How many of you believe that Bobbie wanted me to say that? I'm going to tell you, I've had plenty of conversations with her over the years about her family. And I'm going to tell you, that's what she wanted me to say. I said what I wanted to say. I bragged on her. I talked about what a wonderful person she was, and you all knew that story. But there were things that she wanted me to say. So I've said them. I hope this has been a benefit to you. Is there anyone here that would like to say some things? I know Vance has something, and he asked to go last. But anybody else? We have a microphone right down here if you don't want to come up here and stand. But anybody who would like to share, we'd love to have you come up. Very good. Come on.
I'm Audrey Bernhausen, Bobbie's oldest, regardless of what the guys think. And I'm 64 years old. Mom was something. I could come home from school and have forgotten to tell her I needed a certain dress or a skirt. That's when we wore dresses and skirts to school. And overnight, she'd come up with it. Just what I wanted, just what I needed, and probably didn't sleep. She was a chauffeur with 5 of us. Someone was going somewhere, doing something. She still had supper ready. But we got where we needed to be. She was that way with everyone. So she probably is up there too. Thank y'all for coming.
Who else? Don't be shy. Come on up. Come on up, Phil. Very good.
I guess a couple stories I remember. Mom always was very encouraging, and I did a lot of stupid stuff, but and I still do. So, but even I was wanting to go to the Virgin Islands. Go ahead, don't know if you don't try if you're going to make it or not. So I ended up spending a few years down there. I made it. But I remember one of the stories. I was a kid. I did something to James as usual, so I always got in trouble for it. And Mom had a way of giving me a spanking. It was in syllables. It was Dean Mayfield, don't you? So she looked at me pretty good. I got a little more melody at one point. I go, Mom, can you use shorter syllables? And she looked at me pretty good at that. That didn't help things any. And then another time, I think it was the spring fling. It was Mom, because she always gave me these laughing fits. And I think it was Mom and Aunt Sue. But it was the spring fling. They used to call them moonwalks. They call them bounce castles now. So, and all the kids were jumping in there, and Mom and I think Sue got in there, and they're a little bit heavier. So I created this big pit in the middle of the thing. And all the kids got sliding in the middle. So all the kids were screaming. And Mom and Sue just started laughing to the point they can't get out. So it takes a good 10, 15 minutes to get them pulled out of there. But they were just crying and laughing the whole time. But that's what I think about Mom. She was always optimistic, and I couldn't imagine a more loving house than we raised in. So.
Very good. Thank you. Someone else.
I'm Sharon. I'm James's wife, and came to the family. My first visit was 7 Christmases ago. So I'm from a kind of large family, but holy cow! So I go to Vance's house for Christmas, and there were like 22 people there, and Vance bet me I couldn't remember everybody's name and recount that at the end of the day, which I believe I got 21. Anyway, so Mom is there, and we eventually, the kids are running around after the meal and stuff, and we get to talking. And so we talk for a little bit, and she says, I'm going to pray for you. I said, I appreciate that. Is there a particular prayer? She goes, yeah, James is a handful. And I said, well, is there something I need to know? She goes, well, there's a bunch, but, just, hang in there. So anyway, we would go and see Mom and Buddy at the house, and as she became more and more to where she couldn't get up and get around, and if you've been to the house, Mom and I would sit over in the new bedroom section, which was downstairs, and James and Buddy would sit over on the other side in the living room and watch mostly football because we'd go on Sunday afternoons. And so she'd tell me stories. She'd tell me stories about her and her little brother Johnny, and how they were, I guess that was like Porpoise area, and she would have to beat these kids off the swing because Johnny wanted to swing on that swing, and she was going to make sure that happened. So, but anyway, she would always tell me when we left, she said for the day, she'd say, I'm going to pray for you. And I'd always tell her how much I appreciated that. And every once in a while I'd go, are you still praying for me for James? And she goes, no, I just like to say prayers. Well, but she was just an absolute ray of sunshine. And I don't know that there's anybody in here that doesn't know that ever spent 5 seconds with her, but she was an absolute ray of sunshine. And I lost my mom in 2005, and Bobbie was just my surrogate mom, I guess, and always wanted to make sure that everybody in the family was happy and doing as well as they could be doing. And so I know that no matter where she is, she's still saying a prayer for me and everybody else that's here.
Good, thank you.
I'm Bo Minshew. I've probably known Bobbie D all my life. Probably really got real close with her for the last 35 or 40 years. My mom and her became best of friends. And talk about optimistic. There's no doubt about Bobbie D about that. my wife and I bought our first house. And that's not really true because it seemed like it was two two-befores in a window. And when Bobbie came over there, my mom and her cleaned the place up because we had pretty much got discouraged. Cleaned it up, pulled carpet out, and they weren't young at that time. And she said, "Now just look what all we can do, Bo." And I'm thinking, I don't know what you're seeing, Bobbie. But every Saturday and Friday and during the week, she showed up and we worked. And then I began to see what Bobbie was seeing. There was more laughter going on than anything over there. Almost as much laughter as work. But we worked hard. I came home one day off of work, went to my mom's house, and there was my mom and Bobbie laughing. Like, what is so funny? Well, we were over putting sheetrock up, and we cut it wrong 3 times. And I'm thinking, y'all just wasted 3 pieces of my sheetrock. Man, they're laughing at it. Something I'll never forget. We were working, and here they are. I'm 30. I get to my saw, and they go, "Get away from that boy." It's like, get away from what? My mom or Bobbie cut every piece of wood or anything else because they afraid I was going to cut my fingers off at 30. She used to say that was the best time that she ever had. When we finished that house, I'm like, what are you talking about, Bobbie? But I know what she was talking about because we took a house and she helped us make a home out of it. And she'll always be family to us. We always said Bobbie was our family. And she was, without a doubt.
Someone else.
Well, I'm James. Many of y'all know me as Pokey, probably most of y'all. And just so everybody knows, Dean did not corner the market on that spanking syllable thing. Everything that everybody said is true. The eternal optimist. I've had many occasions to experience that. I still try to keep that in my life these days. What I want to say is over the last few years, Mom has not done well, and as Rick said, she kind of was a slow decline, so we all got to say our goodbyes. I just want to say she finally won.
Very good. Thank you. Doc?
One day I was down doing something in the area of Aransas Pass, and Bobbie's husband, Ned, called me on the phone and said, "I want to show you something." And what he wanted to show me was David and Audrey. And so I went to Con Brown Harbor, and there they were. And I have never spent any time with her, but what I didn't leave feeling better than I did when I went to her. She just was a very special person, and I want everybody to know that I loved her very much.
Anybody else? Pickens.
Jan always accused me I couldn't talk without my hands. I'll be on the phone. Here's one. Mom had to go over to Bay City. She was getting really depressed for a while, and Audrey and I went to see her quite a bit, and James and others. And this was one while she was over there, but she got really depressed, and then she reached a point where they kind of got her, I guess, a depression medicine and so forth. They got it lined out, and all of a sudden she was like a different person. I'm so blessed. I can't believe how blessed I am. And that was kind of where she was telling us that story. Go to the next one, shall we? This is just another one now. Some of my siblings said, don't show that picture. Well, she'd fallen out of bed in the nursing home, but this is where she was still somewhat mobile. And they could not convince her that she shouldn't be getting up on her own power. So she was going to do it. But she accidentally fell out. She banged her cheekbone. That's a bruise on her cheek. But, man, she loved that back area. She loved to look at the flowers. And when she could, and as long as she was able, that was her camp out spot, that garden behind the nursing home. Go ahead, Shelby. Now, this picture is kind of special. I know it's blurry because it was on my phone, but it's the only one I had. This was the one and only time Buddy went to visit her because he felt so guilty. She actually didn't know who he was at the time, so I reintroduced him. Go ahead, Joey, one more. If any of y'all came to their house, this was normal. This was it. If you walked in the door, that's what you were going to see right there. Buddy watching TV, Mom sitting in that chair, and if we started talking politics, we'd lose Mom pretty quick. She was gone. But that represents life at home for quite a while. Go ahead and next one, Jim. Now this was, Audrey, correct me. I think Mom was 35. I don't know, in 67. She was born in 32. This is when Mom and Buddy, here she'd lost Billy Joe, and she'd lost Robert E., and then she met Buddy. And Buddy was a good man. He took on 4 kids. Well, go ahead. Just some shots of when they were both younger. Go ahead, one more. Now this was, everybody called it Bessie Mae, Granny Mae. You know, this was Granny, and believe it or not, I think that was at the Wild Peach Homestead. I think that's where that picture was taken. But Mom's a mom. Mom's mom passed away at the age of 58. She had, somehow or another, she was crossing the street. She got bumped by a car, and it broke her hip. And I don't know why, but she didn't survive that hip fracture. But this was an early picture when probably hadn't been at that place in Wild Peach too terribly long. Go ahead. And then this is a picture of, again, Bessie, Mom's mom. That was probably over in Galveston area, I'm betting. Go ahead, Sheldon. Again, just an earlier picture of Mom. Now, it says, always yours, darling. I got to looking. I'm sure she gave that picture to Billy Joe. That was a long time ago. That's Audrey and David's father. And this is Mom and her older brother, Glenn. So she would tell tons of stories about those two. And this, I'm thinking, is Billy Joe. Is that right? This is Mom's first husband. That's Audrey and David's father. I mean, I'm looking. She had this giant old suitcase, and there's millions of pictures in there, and some of them are so old they kind of like just stuck together. I couldn't get them apart, some of them, but that's the only picture I could find. To be honest, that's the first time I ever got to see this man, Billy Joe. That's the first time I ever got to see what he looked like. I think that's Audrey. So that's Mom after she had her first child. Okay. Next one. And that's the Mayfield clan before I was a part of it. And that's Mom's second marriage, and that's Grandpa Mayfield and her mom and my dad, and there's Audrey and David there at the wedding. Now that. Exactly. I don't know if y'all have seen Mom's house there in Wild Peach, but they redid it back in the 80s sometime, and that's what the house looked like before they did anything to it, while my dad was still there and everything. Yeah. Something noteworthy here is one of those rose bushes is still alive. It's on the right-hand side of the property, and those rose bushes are ancient. I mean, they've been there forever, it seems like. And this is Aunt Susie. Mom had a special place in her heart for Aunt Susie. The three amigos. That's not Jake. And here's Mom. That's Audrey's wedding, and I thought that was special because you can see the look in her face. She was really happy. Go ahead. My apologies, David. But anyway, some of y'all might have seen that at Buddy's because it was in there too. Go ahead. Now, did y'all know that? I don't know if y'all saw Dean earlier, but there is no more hair. Alias Pokey.
Oh, okay.
Any of y'all curious where the name Pokey came from? He was the last sibling, and we didn't know if he was ever going to crawl. We didn't. I mean, he was just slow as all get out. And we would say, "You're just poking around. Come on. You're just poking." And then all of a sudden it was just, "Come on, Pokey. Come on, Pokey." And that's where the name Pokey came from. Now, this is all of us today. Actually, we're actually a little older now, but what's noteworthy about that oak tree that we're all standing in front of, we're going to use that as a final memorial. When we're going to... Some of them. I had... That's actually the sixth child. Yeah. I can tell you, when we would all go visit Mom, we didn't come very high on the totem pole, but that dog right there, you didn't, and that was for Buddy too. You didn't mess with Molly.
That dog came to me as well.
Oh. They had a painting in their house of that dog. It might have been Aunt Maida, wasn't it? Maida, she liked to paint. Those of you that know Maida, that's Doc and them's sister, Doc and June's sister. But Maida, Mom, and June, and Susie, and they were the best of friends. I mean, they just, when they got together, there was no separating them. Go ahead. Now, this is, Mom battled cancer like 2 or 3 times in her life. Was it 2 or 3? 2 times. She still had cancer present here, so you can tell she didn't feel too good. By the way, she completely battled that cancer, and she beat it the second time, and she was cancer-free and lived quite a few years beyond that. But this is Ava, which is the young lady you see here on the front pew. When she was just a little one, and Mom just loved Ava. She was the last official grandkid. Plenty of great-grandchildren, but that was the last direct one. And again, she's holding Ava there, her and Buddy. That was, I'm not sure, we was probably having some get-together. Yeah. One more. Now, y'all saw some of these. I kind of retired early in life, and Mom and Buddy bought a camper. I bought a camper. And we would just go all over the place. And I would just ask them, where do y'all want to go? And that's the way we would go. So this was a trip we went and saw Dean up in Colorado. This was a mountain stream not far from where Dean lives. But just kind of, go ahead, Shelby, just show a few, like idiots. We're from Texas. We went north. It's like mid-June, okay? We didn't bring a single jacket because, in Texas, who needs a jacket in Texas in June? We went up there. We drove up to the top of this mountain near where Dean lives, and it was snowing. As you can see, there's snow on the ground, and we're thinking, what's wrong with this? And for those of y'all don't know, that's Maida. That's Doc's sister, June's sister. Gary's mom, and she's there with Gary these days. But she went with us on that trip. We had a big time. But I can tell you, Maida and Mom would team up against Buddy. It was kind of bad. This was the last field trip. This was the last time we were able to actually get Mom. She was still mobile enough that we could move her from like a wheelchair to a car and so forth. And this was the last time we were able to get Mom out of the nursing home. And Dave was throwing what was that event, David? Really? Okay. We all piled in at David's place, and Mom had a big day. It was good. Audrey brought her and helped her get back. And that was the last time she actually left the nursing home that I can remember. And she did not like the nursing home. She was a very independent woman. She was used to running the show. She kept the book. She did everything. And she did not like being in a nursing home where she felt like she couldn't kind of control everything going on, Now, this was the place she loved to hang out. She would sit on that back porch. Like if you were looking on the back porch, if you look to the right, that big oak tree we were standing in front of. I mean, she just loved the birds, and she always put plenty of bird seed out, and that was it. That was the place where when she was feeling well enough, she would sit out there for hours and just enjoy the views. This was at our house, I think Caleb's baby shower. Her hair's shorter there because this is where she'd beaten her round of cancer the second time, and her hair was coming back, and it came back. She lost most of it, but it came back full, and she was doing real well there. This is before her memory started declining as much as it did. Just same event, different picture. And when we were making all these camping runs, Aunt June has a place up near Garner State Park up around Lakey, Texas. And my rig's on the left, and that's Mom and Buddy's rig, and that's Aunt June's place. And that pretty much turned into a July 4th tradition. We would all end up there just about every July 4th for 10, 12 years straight. So that was always a good time, and they really enjoyed it. We went up to Lake Whitney. That was just our campsite there. Go ahead. I don't know if any of y'all been around New Braunfels area, but there's a place up there called Potter's Creek. Man, it's beautiful. If you ever get a chance, that's a good spot to camp. Deer run all over that. That's Aunt June. Same place. We're sitting under the pavilion, just enjoying the sight. That's Mom's same picture here. That's her picture of the directory here at the church. Now this was, Aunt Susie came to see Mom on Saturday. Her and Susie's 5 girls. And Mom was laying there in bed. She hadn't eaten much for the days following this. And she looked at Susie and said, following this, I was going to get anybody who wanted to come over our house to come by. We had some finger food and snacks and cookies, but Jan come down with the flu yesterday, and I wouldn't do that to anybody. So, anybody that has the time or want to, if you just want to visit, I was thinking we might pop in at Diamond S over there and just, anybody that wants to, no commitments, but I'm so glad all y'all came.
Anybody else prompted to say anything? So we have one more song that we're going to sing, and then we will have the closing prayer after that. Thank you all for coming. I very much appreciate all the effort that was put in by the kids to put this together. I'm very much glad to be a part of it. So we have a final song. Final prayer. Our God and Father in heaven, thank you for being with us through this service. Father, we're so thankful for the wonderful service that we've had. Father, we're thankful for the memories that we have of Bobbie, the pictures that we have, the wonderful stories that we have to share. We're thankful for the information in the obituary that give us even a fuller life of Bobbie in her earlier days. Father, we pray that you will bless this family as they have times of mourning and times of darkness because of the passing of their mother and grandmother and great-grandmother. We realize, Father, that even after this pain passes, that we will all still have the memories and the pictures to help remind us of Bobbie for generations to come. But be with the family, help them to lean on you in difficult times and each other, Father, that they might make it through and that good will come from this. Be with those who are from some distance away, that they will be successfully transported back home. Father, be with each one of us. Help us to be stronger in your service and better. Forgive us of our sins. We ask it in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.